Right, hello, people. Of course, it is a new year in boxing, and we are over a quarter of the way into the century. So I saw kind of the other day, the Ring Magazine had put up their, I think it was top 10 fighters of the last 25 years. I thought I'd do a list myself. Let's get into it, man. Let's get into it with some honourable mentions. Honourable mention number one, Vladimir Klitschko. Now, the reason he's an honourable mention is, for one, his resume is very, very thin, right? I believe he fought in a very weak era, but you cannot discount the title defenses and the length of the reign. Anyone who reigns for that long in the heavyweight division, especially, we all know what kind of division it is. One punch can change anything. You have to give some plaudits to. Despite how weak the run might have been, it wasn't a terrible run. Like, it was a good run. He beat some good fighters. No, Bryant Jennings, Kubrat Pulev, Povetkin, which is a graceful performance. Marius Wack, Tony Thompson, David Hay, which is a very good win. Samuel Peter, Eddie Chambers, Hasim Ratman, Tony Thompson, Lamont Brewster, like Chris Bird. Like, it's not terrible, but it isn't. I'm not going to lie and say the run was incredible. Ray Mercer, like it's a very considering the era in which he fought in the 2000s to the kind of mid 2010s, it is good enough. Like, it is as good as you're probably going to get. Yeah, anyone who has that many title defenses and reigns for over a decade, goes undefeated for over a decade, you got to give credit to, especially in heavyweight division. But I don't think his resume is deep enough or his accomplishments are impressive enough to truly put him in that top 10. Honorable mention number two. People get a little bit pissed off at me for this. Andre Ward, 32-0, of course. Similar-ish reasons to Vladimir Klitschko. Of course, he went undefeated with very few fights, though. 32 fights isn't much. He's got a good resume, but Andre Ward never did anything in his career that made me go, wow. Do you know what I mean? Of course, his skill set and his ability and his ring IQ was phenomenal, and that was the kind of wow factor. But in terms of great feats, like Roberto Duran going from lightweight to middleweight and going the distance against prime Marvin Hagler, he never did anything like that for me, which made you kind of sit back and reevaluate and go, this guy's a crazy motherfucker. And you don't have to do that to be a great fighter. He is a great fighter, but what he actually did, when you put some asterisks on it, right? He beat the likes of Arthur Abraham, Carl Froch, Chad Dawson, Kovalev. These are good fighters. Other than that, it's not the greatest. And the big win, every great fighter kind of has a win on their resume, which is the standout win, right? The big all-time great win, let's call it. And for Andre Ward, that win is definitely Kovalev. But the first fight is a very, very questionable win, right? Kovalev was 30-0-1 going into that fight, and Ward could have very arguably lost it. He was down in round 2. It was a very, very close fight, and a lot of people do believe Sergey Kovalev beat him. I think I watched the fight a long, long time ago. It's hard to argue with that fact. Let's just say that. And the rematch was very, very controversial with the low blows, of course. So his resume is somewhat thin outside of the great win he has, and the great win he has some pretty major asterisks to it. Next honorable mention, Vasily Lomachenko. This one fucking hurts, I really wanted to put him in the top 10. Anyone who knows this channel knows how much of a fucking Lomachenko simp I am. Of course, Lomachenko retired with a record of 18-3, 12 knockouts. It's just really, really, really hard to put him on this list, right? Because he never went undisputed. He was a freeweight world division champion, freeweight division champion, but it's just those 3 losses, man. Skill set wise, he's so close to being top 10, by the way. Skill set wise, he's phenomenal. Like, his footwork, the angles, just his little. But the resume, it comes down to resume. right? He never had that standout big win, for example, right? He beat Gary Russell Jr., Nicholas Walters, who wasn't a terrible fighter, Rigondeaux, which is the closest thing he kind of ever got to a standout win, but Rigondeaux was upper weight divisions smaller than Loma. Jorge Linares, Jose Petraza, which isn't a bad win, Anthony Corolla, Luke Campbell. But then when you get into kind of big names, this is of course more of a bigger name now, but he lost to Teofimo Lopez, for example. Did beat Nakatani after that, beat Richard Comey, beat Jermaine Ortiz. These are good wins. There's nothing wrong with these wins. These are good wins. But then you get to his next big name and his shot at undisputed against Devin Haney, and he loses it. Now, do I think he lost that fight? No. I actually scored it a draw when I scored it. But I said if any man could have won that fight, it would have been Lomachenko. But unfortunately, he didn't get the win. So he doesn't get the achievement. And then he beat George Kambosos for the IBF world title in his last fight in 2024. Yeah, he just doesn't have that standout win. And it's unfortunate because it's a decent resume. He accomplished some fucking good things. And yeah, man. Next honorable mention, Miguel Cotto. Yeah, I just think he was a really, really well-rounded fighter, good talent, beat some big names. Behind Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather was kind of the guy, right? You got to think this guy sold out Madison Square Garden every time he fought. He was probably the third biggest guy there, but he was just in an era with two of the fucking most immensely talented fighters you'll ever see. Yeah. And next one, Jesse Rodriguez. He's just too young. That's why he's not mentioned. He'll probably be on here, but he's just too young in a minute. Moving on to the list, number 10, we have the boogeyman, the middleweight boogeyman, Gennady Golovkin. Now, I initially wanted to put this man at number 9 above the man who I have at number 9, but couldn't really. And it's a case of very similar to the honorable mentions. It's a good resume. It's a good skill set. He had kind of an aura about him, but he doesn't have that big standout win officially. Now, we go into his career. A lot of the notable names came when he came over to America. By the way, he wasn't in his prime when he came over to America. He just wasn't, right? He beat the likes of Gabe Rosado, who's just a tough fighter, Matthew Macklin, who's like a good British European level fighter, Martin Murray, who was a good fighter, William Monroe Jr., David Lemieux, Kell Brook, who came up 2 weight classes but was a very, very good fighter, Daniel Jacobs, that was a close fight, Canelo, who he got the draw against, should have won that fight. That should have been the big standout win that kind of catapulted him a little bit higher on this list, but unfortunately he didn't get it officially. Then loses Canelo in the rematch. I think he won the first fight and the second fight should have been a draw, which is funny. Beat Sergey Derevyanchenko. It's a good win. Kamel Sarameto, which is whatever. Yeah, and then loses Canelo in his last fight. So he retired with a record of 42, 2-1 with 37 knockouts. He had an aura about him. He was one of the most ducked and feared fighters in boxing. But unfortunately, even with all of that, doesn't quite make it. Honestly, I probably could have put him outside of the top 10. Put Klitschko in there, or Andre Ward, or Lomachenko, but I feel like Klitschko isn't really in the running for the greatest heavyweight of all time. He's probably in the top 10, but I don't really put him up there. I think he was a limited fighter, honestly. Andre Ward I don't put up there as one of the best light heavyweights or super middleweights ever. Lomachenko could have been one of the best featherweights, super featherweights ever, just didn't stay there long enough. So, but I can definitely put Golovkin as like number 2, right? Middleweights of all time, considering best middleweight of all time, Marvin Hagler, then maybe Carlos Monzon, and then maybe Golovkin. So, yeah. Right, now, number 9, we have Wales's Joe Calzaghe. 2-weight division world champion, I believe, super middleweight and light heavyweight, retired with a record of 46-0, 32 knockouts. That is pretty much the reason I have him above Golovkin, is because he did retire undefeated. We all know how hard that is. The resume of Joe Calzaghe is a little thin. He's got a win over Roy Jones. That was a pretty shot version, not so shot to the point where he was completely useless, but a pretty shot version of Roy Jones. He had lost 3 of his last 6, but was on a 3-fight win streak, of course. Beat Bernard Hopkins. People will say the same thing about Bernard Hopkins as they did Roy Jones Jr., but you got to think he beat Bernard Hopkins in 2008. Bernard Hopkins won his last world title fight in 2014. So Bernard Hopkins was a special fighter. He could that motherfucker, an alien, right? The nickname's very fitting. He beat Mikkel Kessler, 39-0, Prime Kessler. That's a very good win. Peter Manfredo, Jeff Lacey, and outside of there's some good domestic level fighters. There isn't Richie Woodall, for example, but there isn't a lot of, Robin Reed. It's that kind. It's not the kind of world class fighters that give you a really deep resume. But going 46-0, beating the guys he did beat, even though there isn't many of them, is still very impressive. Number 8, we have Roman Gonzalez. Skill set. I think what he done, 4 weight division world champion. I think when you start going to 4 weight divisions, when you win your weight, when you win your world title in your 4th weight class, I think that's when you start to put you up there with the Sugar Ray Leonards, the Roberto Durans, these great weight jumpers of all time. And he absolutely is that. You look at the people he's lost to. Estrada could have won that fight. I struggle with the name. Rungvisai. I use his nickname, Rungvisai. Yeah, got knocked out by Rungvisai. But also lost to Rungvisai in a fight he very much could have won. So, do you know what I mean? The guy, all of his losses are questionable except the time he got knocked the fuck out. Beat Carlos Cuadras. He's got some wins. 4-weight division world champion. The skill set, the footwork of Roman Gonzalez. The way he closed the distance, the way he cut the ring off. Don't even fucking get me. I love footwork. Don't even get me started, bro. Fucking hell. Moving on to number 7. This is the first, I'd say, really, really modern day fighter. Of course, still active, still at the top of his game. We have the great Naoya Inoue. What do I need to say about this man? This man is a fucking superstar. He is a 4-weight division world champion, undisputed in 2. He is currently 32-0 with 27 knockouts. 32 years of age. Just beat David Picasso, who's a useful fighter, let's just say. Has beaten Akhmadaliev, Raymond Cardenas, TJ Doheny, Luis Nery, Marlon Tapares, Stephen Fulton, Will Butler, Nonito Donaire, which is kind of his big standout win. Nonito Donaire probably at the back end of definitely at the back end of his career, but still Nonito Donaire, still very useful. Nonito Donaire is still giving tough fights to people now. So that's something to be said. And within a way, it's the dominance, right? It's the dominance. It's kind of very similar to Triple G, except I'll make a defense for Inoue. The name value on Triple G's resume is just lacking. The reason Inoue's name value is lacking is because of a lot of people just don't know lower weight classes, right? But if you get to know these lower weight classes, these are fucking good fighters. They're very useful fighters, and he's cutting through them like a hot knife through butter. So you got to take that into account. 4 weight divisions, probably gonna do 5 when it's all said and done. Will probably beat Nakatani in his next fight, which will be a very, very good win. Yeah, man. What's there to be said about the great Naoya Inoue? Moving on to number 6, we have my favourite fighter of all time, the great Terence Bud Crawford. Now, this is the first one where I can kind of go, this motherfucker did some really crazy shit. Of course, Terence Crawford very recently retired 42-0 with 31 knockouts. 5-division world champion, went from lightweight to super middleweight, skipping out on middleweight, of course. Pretty much won every decision by unanimous decision or knocked everyone out. Beat the likes of Canelo, Israel Madrimov, Errol Spence, David Adenisian, Sean Porter, Kell Brook, Kaliaskas, Amir Khan, Jose Benavidez Jr., blah, 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 blah. The resume of Terence Bud Crawford is good. The thing that sets it apart is the Canelo win, of course. He moved up from welterweight to 154 pounds, fought Israel Madrimov. Now, I'm of the belief it takes two, maybe 3 fights to grow into a weight class. David Benavidez' performance against Vostok, for example, he looked good in that fight, but he slowed down. I believe that was because of the weight, right? So I believe it takes a few fights to grow into his weight class. He moves up to super welterweight, in my opinion, doesn't really have time to grow in that weight class. Then his next fight is 2 weight classes above that weight class he's only had 1 fight in, against an all-time great fighter who's on this list, by the way, in Canelo Alvarez, and beats him absolutely comprehensively. What more does need to be said about Terence Bud Crawford? I just did a whole video about it. Watch it. Number 5, and this is how you know I'm not biased, we have Canelo Alvarez. Now, you might be saying, how are you putting him just above Crawford? Like, how are you putting him one above Crawford? Why are you, Crawford beat him comprehensively. I put Canelo above Terence Crawford because for about 15 years of this century, we're 26 years into it, Canelo has been fighting top-level opposition for about 15 of them. Canelo has a record of 63-3 with 2 draws. Beat the likes of Jaime Munguia, Jamal Charlo, John Ryder, Golovkin. Been in the ring with Bivol, Caleb Plant, Billy Joe Saunders, Callum Smith, Sergey Kovalev, Daniel Jacobs, Rocky Fielding, Golovkin, Chavez Jr., Liam Smith, Amir Khan, Miguel Cotto, James Kirkland, Erislandy Lara, the great Floyd Mayweather, Austin Trout, Shane Mosley, Kermit Sindri. It goes on and on and on. Enough said, really. What is he? A 4-weight class world champion, undisputed, two-time undisputed super middleweight champion. And definitely still has a little bit left in the tank. Yeah. Like, you got to look at his losses as well. You got to count those 3 losses. They're against Floyd Mayweather, Dimitri Bivol, and Terence Crawford. Now, he's beaten comprehensively in all 3 of those fights, but those are 3 of the greatest fighters. And Dimitri Bivol very easily could have appeared on this list. Moving on to number 4, we have the alien I mentioned earlier, Bernard Hopkins. I rate what Bernard Hopkins did very, very fucking highly, right? Bernard Hopkins was the oldest world champion in boxing history, right? How old was he when he won his last world title? He was 49 years old when he won his last world title. That is absolutely crazy. The discipline of this man, right? The takes on all comers mindset, right? He had a record of 55, 8-2. Got finished once by Joe Smith Jr. Right, but at the age of 50, fought Sergey Kovalev when Sergey Kovalev was the man, right? Beat Jean Pascal, beat Roy Jones Jr., beat Kelly Pavlik, which is a great win at the age he did it. Lost Joe Calzaghe, beat Ronald Wright, beat Antonio Tarver, beat the shit out of Antonio Tarver. Did lose to Jermaine Taylor, beat Oscar De La Hoya, beat Felix Trinidad. Yeah, I mean, this guy, it's just the longevity. In terms of middleweight, super middleweight, light heavyweights, yeah, especially middleweight. Middleweight, Bernard Hopkins was an animal. Moving on, we have another modern fighter. We have Alexander Usyk. Now, Alexander Usyk, of course, 2-weight division champion, undisputed in both. He's beat the likes of Daniel Dubois, Tyson Fury twice. Well, Daniel Dubois twice, Andy Joshua twice, Derek Chisora, Chaz Witherspoon, Tony Bellew, Murat Gastiev, Marius Briedis, Marco Huck, Michael Hunter, Christoph Gulacki. I have no clue why I mentioned Chaz Witherspoon. But yeah, like I said, he's the greatest cruiserweight of all time, comprehensively. Don't give me any bullshit about Evander Holyfield fighting more Hall of Famers. Of course, he's fought more Hall of Famers. Most of the people Usyk beat are still fucking active. You prick. But yeah, right. Beat Michael Hunter, Marco Huck, who has what does he have? Is he tied for the most title defenses in cruiserweight history? Marius Bridis, who's a great fighter. Murat Gassiev, who's a problem. Tony Bellew, who's a very good fighter. Chisora, who's a handful, right? Despite the losses, Jewel's always been a handful. Anthony Joshua speaks for itself. Daniel Dubois, good young fighter. Tyson Fury speaks for itself. Yeah, so he's the greatest cruiserweight of all time. Goes up to heavyweight and starts beating guys who have about a 40-pound weight advantage on him. That's the definition of pound for pound. Alexander Usyk is number 3. Number 2. Speaking of the definition of pound for pound, we have the great Manny Pac-Man Pacquiao. What do I need to fucking say about Manny Pacquiao? 8 division world champion. Still getting it done. Well, still looking good. I'd say still getting it done, but still looking good. He's still active. Just came off a draw in the WBC welterweight title fight against Mario Barrios. Beat Keith Thurman at his older age. Beat Adrian Broner, Jeff Horn. No, he lost to Jeff Horn, but he should have beat him. Beat Tim Bradley, Chris Algieri, Brandon Rios, Juan Manuel Marquez, Shane Mosley, Antonio Margarito, Miguel Cotto, Ricky Hatton, Oscar De La Hoya, Barrera, of course, Eric Morales. Like, I don't need to say anything. He's an 8 division world champion. Let's move on to number 1. We have Floyd Money Mayweather. Enough said, really. 50-0. 5-weight division world champion was Floyd, I want to say. I'm going to have to fact check that. Of course, Floyd was never undisputed, but it kind of all speaks for itself. The resume is good. It's filled with all-time great names, despite the fact he might have fought some of them past their best. You know, he fought Andre Berto, Manny Pacquiao, Marcos Maidana twice, Canelo, Roberto Guerrero, Miguel Cotto, Victor Ortiz, Shane Mosley, Juan Manuel Marquez, Ricky Hatton, Oscar De La Hoya, Carlos Baldomir, Zab Judah, Arturo Gatti, you know, Jose Luis Castillo twice, Diego Corrales. Like, the guy has just one of them resumes. Skill set, one of the best defensive boxers you'll ever see. And put on some of the biggest nights you'll ever see in boxing history. Yeah, so that's my list. Here's to another 25 years. Yeah. I can't wait to see the next year of boxing. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.